In the world of billiards, legends are often forged with a cue in hand, but some shape the game with a pen, a vision, and an unwavering commitment to its story. Our guest today is one such titan. For over 4 decades, Mike Panozzo has been the heartbeat of billiards journalism. His dedication earned him a rightful place in the Billiard Congress of America Hall of Fame.
Please welcome Mike Panozzo into the BCA Hall of Fame.
Mike has chronicled the game's highs and lows, profiled its greatest players, and provided insightful commentary that has influenced the sport's direction. This is Mike Panozzo.
Welcome to this episode of Talkin English. I have the honor of not only being in front of a Hall of Fame inductee this year.
Can I sit here like this and hold my ring?
Of course you can, yeah. He's got the Hall of Fame ring. Without any further ado, Mike Panozzo, Billiards Digest, Billiards aficionado. Is there any other superlatives you could use about
those are overplayed as it is.
Your career within the billiards world? Which again, even up until that Hall of Fame dinner, I didn't realize just how deep, how deep rooted it went within the billiards world. So
yeah, it's my adult life is essentially it.
Yeah, your entire adult life.
It is.
So when did you first get into the sport? Even as a player or just an interest?
I was a typical high school and college kid who loved to knock the ball around if there was a table available. I did, with friends. So I always enjoyed the game and I found it fascinating, but I never played. I never owned a cue. I was never in a league. As I mentioned the other night, I just done journalism, major, looking for a job out of college.
And what state was that in?
I went to college in Wisconsin and was living in Chicago pretty much my whole life. Until just recently. And so I was, just scouring the papers for opportunities, and this opportunity came up to interview with a small magazine publishing company that did a bowling magazine and a billiard magazine. And so I called up and went down and interviewed with them. At this point, Billiards Digest was about 1.5 years old. Mm-hmm. It had been part of our parent company, our parent magazine was a bowling magazine. Okay. That was founded in 1913.
And what was more popular at the time?
Bowling.
Without
doubt.
Okay.
Bowling was huge. The magazine was very successful. Bowling, membership was 7 or 8 million, signed up members of league bowling. Wow. So it was a big sport. And my boss's family had started this bowling magazine, and for years through the late 50s to the mid 70s, had always devoted several pages in each issue of the bowling magazine to billiards because the industries were very tied together in terms of manufacturing and distribution. All bowling centers had pool tables, after the
AMF, right?
AMF, Brunswick, companies like that. And, if you went into a sporting goods store back in those days, they carried bowling and billiards.
Right.
And so there was a lot of symmetry there. And over time, the bowling people got annoyed with having pages in their magazine devoted to billiards, and the billiard people wanted their own magazine. And so in 1978, he kind of split them off and started Billiards Digest. And over the course of the first 1.5 years, he had gone through 3 editors. And so luckily for me, he was looking for number 4 at the time that I was out of college. And I went and interviewed him, and he sat there and showed me this list of responsibilities of the editor. And I thought I was just going in for like a little associate editor writing job. And so I just kind of lied my way through the interview, figuring just, give me the chance. If I fail at that point, it's on me. But you were at the table. That was your opportunity. That was it. So I was like, I'm not giving this up. So I lied a little bit about, my abilities in certain areas.
Did you have a degree? You had
I had a journalism degree from college.
Journalism degree.
But this was, a hands-on magazine where you had to do, you went to an event, you did the photography as well. You came back, you cut and pasted pages up. So you had to know about design and graphics, things like that. And I may have fibbed a little bit about
A little embellishment never hurt anybody, right?
Yeah, never. And so I got the job, and thankfully, he stuck with me and taught me the ropes and about publishing, about magazines, about advertising sales, about everything, and about the billiard industry, and took me around to events and introduced me to people, and it was an immediate sense of community and fun people and interesting players, and so it was very, as anybody who gets into pool knows, it's very easy to get hooked once you get your toe in there.
Yeah, I mean, without a doubt. I wish I'd found American pool a bit sooner, quite honestly. Coming from a snooker and English pool background, that's all we had in the UK. There was very limited, American pool.
Right.
But where you would find it is, funny you mention that now, when I went bowling, there was a pool table, but it was in horrible condition. They had drinks spilled all over them. You were never kind of like, it was always like, oh, let me just go back down to the snooker club where I know I can have great equipment.
Right.
A little bit peace and quiet.
Right.
Whereas you come into America now and, I find that the fans are so passionate. The game is so quick and exciting.
Yeah.
It's short. It's easy to get the bug, right?
Yeah, it is. It is very easy to get the bug. And then once you get into the community of players and people involved, especially to me in the U.S., it's that's they get their hooks into you, and you're just not going anywhere.
Yeah. So over the years, who was the kind of first real icon that perhaps you met that you kind of?
Well, one of the first events in Chicago, there was a small private pool room that held some regional tournaments, and then we get some very good players from the Midwest, and one of them was Nick Byron. And he would always pop up from Kentucky to the Chicago area. It's like a 5-hour drive for him or whatever. And I got to meet him early on, and we got to be really good friends. His father, Nick Sr., always traveled around with him, and his brother, Steve. And I got to be really good friends with their family. So he was the first one that I really met. And then after that, Mike Massey was one of the first ones that I met. Then I went to the World Straight Pool Championship in New York a year later. This was 1980 when I got the job. 1981, I went to the World Straight Pool Championship, and that's when I got to meet Irving Crane and Mike Siegel, and Alan Hopkins, and Steve Miserak. All these great players, Lou Butera, all the great players of the day. And in the women's side, Jean Lucas was not playing in that event, but Lori John and Belinda and all these other players, Vicky Frecken, Vicky Paskey. So that was the first taste of, okay, these guys in their tuxedos playing in a big ballroom, and it was pretty cool.
I do miss that about the current era, especially New York was such a big part, and I currently live in New York right now, and I feel like the billiards world's kind of died off a little bit.
With straight pool, you mean?
With
the straight pool World Championships and the tuxedos, and it was a nice event. But when you're in the pool world long enough, you start to understand when Fats used to say, a tuxedo on a pool player is like whipped cream on a hot dog. It just doesn't make any sense. So, it would be nice to think that it was like snooker in that respect, that it could be this very dressed up sport, but it doesn't fit with American pool.
This episode is brought to you by Integrity Cues, BSN's trusted source of premium pool cues and accessories. Shop the entire inventory online now at integritycues.com.
You're spanning over 40 years of kind of knowing the industry. What kind of era for you was the best era, if you like, or the one that you favor the most?
Yeah, definitely the post-colored money era.
Okay.
From late 70s through the 90s, really.
Right.
Was just a boom period for the sport, for the game, in terms of the industry itself. Retailers and table manufacturers and cue manufacturers couldn't make things fast enough. And if you worked for one of those companies, you didn't even have to sell. All you had to do was answer the phone and take orders. It was that good, and the players themselves benefited a lot, particularly the women, who in the 90s developed their own tour, and had their own TV contract. It became wildly popular. There was the pool room boom around the countries where all these big cities were opening up these upscale billiard clubs, and that changed the dynamic of the sport a lot. So that was those were the gravy years. Those were a lot of fun.
Do you think, obviously, we've been in a downturn through the kind of, the thousands and maybe the 2010s a little bit.
Sure.
What do you think, things like Matchroom especially, are they bringing back that boom time, do you feel? Do you feel like it's only going to get better?
Certainly boom time in terms of visibility for the competitive side of the game. Whether that translates, you would hope that translates into more table sales, more cue sales, more everything else sales. But it certainly gets people more involved, more passionate about the sport. So it's all about visibility, right? I mean, it's such a competitive world in terms of getting that visibility for any kind of sport entity, project, anything you're doing. So what they're doing is great. What Predators trying to do with their events, great stuff. So trying to get it out in front of more people more often.
Well, I'm kind of like, as an amateur player myself, I sit in between I love to go to these professional events, but also the APA exists in its way, and the BCA, the CSI, some other great organizations doing it. But I feel like there's not a feeder tour into something like grabbing a tour card like you have to in snooker or tennis, for instance, right?
Yeah, at that level, at the top level, pro level, I think you have to kind of back into that as opposed to starting there and trying to build up. So I see, what like the World Volleyball Tour, things like that, what their model is okay, let's get this up and run, let's create the champions, let's build up the prize fund, let's make this aspirational. And then as we get to have too many players, we can be more selective. And then you kind of back into a feeder tour or things of that nature. So you've got to first get that top level to the point where it's living, earning, right? And so crowded, that people are trying to get into it, that you can develop something off of that. So in that respect, I think you kind of have to go top down.
That's a really good point to make. And I guess in your position, do you find yourself staying or having to stay impartial one way or another? Because as we know, federations and
you try to be impartial. You're going to opine in favor of some people over another if you really feel strongly that one person's made a mistake and the other person's doing something well or whatever it is. But I don't know if it's impartial as much as balanced.
Okay.
Always has to be balanced in terms of listening to both sides or more of the story and then making your own opinion determination of which one you buy into, which one you don't, but always sharing with your readers or your audience, whatever, what those two sides are, what the arguments are for each. And then they can make up their own mind which side they want to fall into.
This is true. With so much experience, and this isn't a play on the age, but as an elder statesman within the industry of billiards,
I can live with that.
You can live with that. Okay, good. We kind of do any of the chairmen or chairpersons or people that are making decisions in these federations, do they ever reach out to you for advice?
Oh, God, no.
An opinion, even, just to say.
No, there are some that do. There's some that will run some ideas by me or say, "What did you think of this?" or "What did you think of that?" They're certainly not going to make any decisions based on, my opinions. But there are some who like the little bit of an argument that you can have with someone because you learn from that. You learn about the side you haven't really thought about or that perspective you haven't thought about. So, it's, and then there's some who just, don't want to talk to you because they just think you're evil. So that happens. That comes part and parcel with the job, and that's fine too.
That's really good to hear. Well, I was present at the Hall of Fame dinner. How emotional was that for you? Because
I made it through far better than I thought I was going to, because I'm a pretty emotional person, and I really had enjoyed all my time in this industry and consider it part of my family. So And I think, as I mentioned before, what you learn about this pool community, especially in the U.S., is that it's so close. Players who've spent months, living at somebody else's house for no rather, just because they needed something and someone would help them out. And you have these, and in this industry, these relationships last 20, 30, 40 years. So it's really special. So, I get emotional at all of Fame. This year was particularly emotional, obviously, because I was being inducted, because my whole family was here to see it. But I get emotional every year at the Hall of Fame banquet because I see what I think you get a different look at what the community looks like, or you get that close-up of just what I mean when I'm talking about how tight-knit that community is. You hear people tell the stories of the people that they lived with for 10 years or that they, coached them here or helped them out here, did whatever they can. These are things that, it's just great stuff, and you can get kind of caught up in the emotion of it.
I think that you've put yourself in a very, elite category with Shane Van Boening and Mark Griffin. How nice was it for you to be in that, inducted in a year?
It's,
it's going to go down.
I still find it hard to put myself in the category with anybody, but to be lucky enough to go in the same year was just amazing, because you heard, and hopefully people will get to see the Hall of Fame banquet on YouTube the next week or so. Listen to Ozzie Reynolds' introduction of Mark Griffin, and you do get more knowledge of just how, as Ozzie said so perfectly, you look at every facet of this industry, and his fingerprints are in there someplace, right? Unbelievably important person. And Shane, one of the top, the Hall of Fame is all top players ever, but he's at the top of the top. So that was a bumper crowd to go in with.
Did you ever think that Shane would outspeech the rest of the talks, the rest of the speakers?
When Shane said, the day before, I asked him how it was coming and what he was playing, whatever. He said, I think I'll probably talk for about 15 minutes. And I thought, wow, 15 minutes. I've never heard Shane talk 15 minutes in my life. And then he trumped that by about 45. But it was all entertaining stuff. And it was, I was sitting down with Molly and Mike, and he asked me what's special about the Hall of Fame banquet. And I said, this is when you see these players get up there and they're different than you've ever seen them before. They're different than you've ever heard from them before. They talk about things that they've never shared with people before. Yeah. They get emotional about things. You've never seen them emotional. And this is that one chance that they get to stand up there and just tell their whole story the way they want to tell it. It's not asking them how they missed a shot in a key match. This is their life and the most important people who were involved in their life and all that thing. So, I always tell people, if you miss the Hall of Fame banquet, you're missing the best night of the year of pool, because you get to see these heroes like you've never seen them before.
And this is the first one I've been to on that scale. And I was really glad that you didn't cut him off, or you didn't flash the light.
No.
And you just allowed him to continue, despite a restless crowd that clearly needed the bathroom.
You worry about that, and it's interesting because I do, as part of the Billiard Media Group, I'm usually the one who ends up calling the person who got elected to tell them they're being inducted. And we always talk about the banquet, and I always tell them, you got to find someone to introduce you. And then I always find that person who's introducing them and say, you got 7 minutes.
Right.
Okay? The introduction should, just say what you got to say, but you got 7 minutes. And then I always tell the Hall of Famer, listen, this is your night. It's going to happen once in your lifetime. This is the biggest achievement you're going to have in the pool, outside of competition, obviously. You can talk as long as you want. I will tell you that you start losing people after about 20 minutes. But if you want to keep going, you just keep going. And Shane, for all those 52 minutes, was still pretty damn entertaining. And I think there were people in that room still enough on the edge of their seat where if he wanted to tell one more story, they'd listen.
Yeah, just one more short story.
Just one more short story, and I'm almost done. And yeah.
What was really nice to see is the amount of people he thanked. And what it takes, really, it takes an army to get that type of success, to earn that, the support factors around you. Who's been the biggest support in your life or your career today?
The guy who hired me, Mort Luby, he's in the Bowling Hall of Fame for his and his family's contribution to that industry. He, like I said, he taught me everything about magazine design and layout and writing and knowing everything about the entire industry. If you want to feel like you can talk about it, you just can't follow the players. You have to know the pool room owners. You have to know the retail store owners. You have to know the manufacturers. You have to know how they all fit together. So he instilled that in me, which I thought was really important. My business partner, Keith Hamilton, has let me kind of, once we bought the company in '94, and we had three bowling magazines and 2 billiard magazines, and he let me stay on the billiard side and just do it because he knew that's what I really loved. And so, I have a lot, and my wife for putting up with me, for 42 years of doing this. So, those and the writers that we've had. I mean, we had a writer, George Fells, who passed away. It's got to be 10 years ago almost now. The best pure writer I ever met, and just to teach me anything, but just to be able to read over his copy every issue before it got printed, and other great writers that we've had. I've just learned so much by reading through their stuff and trying to figure out what their thought process was in their organization and a story and things like that. So, all the great writers that have written for the magazine have impacted me.
And as a mentor, was he someone that kept you on your toes as well? You didn't know where the next issue was coming from, or what problem you might have to overcome?
That would have been more.
That would have been more.
Yeah, he would let me know if I wasn't prepared for something that I should have been prepared for.
Well, my wife, Hillary, lovely Hillary, she works in publications and loves glossy magazines, harking from the era of the magazine.
Yeah.
And my question, I guess, vicariously, I think she would love to ask this question to you directly, is do you see the success?
The future of print magazines?
Yeah. You've been successful for so many years. Is it going to continue? It's been tougher, like anybody would imagine.
Anybody who's, in that heydays that I'm talking about, we were, our small issues were 130 pages, and we were up to 180 something in some months. So it's nowhere near that, but I think that there's still something really, cool and satisfying about it. Yeah, satisfying, and just the images in a print magazine and just the tactile, just pages. I think is really important. I think we've been able to sustain success over the years in large part because billiard demographics always skew a little bit older, so the age demographic still likes a magazine.
Still has a subscription to the newspaper.
Yeah. And two, you don't get a lot of the stuff that we produce, the deep dive profiles and history and things like that in elsewhere, right? So it's still kind of a niche enough where what we produce is still wanted by enough people.
Yeah. That's amazing. And I think, for people that perhaps are at college or thinking about a career in journalism, what would a key piece of advice that you'd give them? Maybe in the billiards industry, in fact.
Well, just in general. I mean, in journalism, it's really gotten beaten up in recent years in terms of its ability to stay thorough and impartial and balanced in an age where everyone wants their news 6 minutes ago. And so you lose so much of that in the rush to be out the door first or before news gets old. And so I'd say don't ever cave into that. Be respectful and true to what you're supposed to be as a journalist. And you will find a medium that allows you to maintain that integrity if you want to find it.
Wow. Yeah, very impactful. Well, I really appreciate your time today.
My pleasure. Thank you.
It's the first time I've had a real chance to sit down and talk to you, and lo and behold, it's on camera. But no, I look forward to...
I look forward to the print version.
Yeah, that's it. How do we get this to print? That's what I'm going to ask them there. So really, really thanks. And enjoy the rest of the cup. It's going to be
Will
incredible.
do. Thank you.
Just buddy.
But I want to leave you with this, if I can get it out. And that is, you need to know that whatever you think I've done for this sport and this industry over the past 44 years absolutely pales in comparison to what you've done for me. And for that, I thank you from the bottom of my heart. I love you all. Thank you very much.